As consumers, we are bombarded by it at every turn, like the Incredible Hulk being bombarded by gamma rays. But what makes some media endure, while others are banished to the forgotten black hole of obscurity, never to be heard from again? Who or what decides this? Hetero life mates Steve and Yahel want to know, and they want to know now. This is Obscurity Now. And what's up, Obscurians? It's time for another episode of Obscurity Now, the show that takes a look at weird and almost forgotten pieces of media, and then we try to decide if they should be remembered for all of human history or tossed in the black void of obscurity, aka space, and never to be heard from again. My name is Steve. I'm one of the hosts, and with me, he's the guy who's always trying to bring that guy down who's trying to make immortality. What was it? What was he always saying?
Geiger?
Oh, yeah. Well, you're not Geiger. He's always, he's got his little catchphrase. I wrote it down here. He says, you are the...
Oh, the soulless minions of orthodoxy?
Yes, that's what I was going to say. You're the leader of the soulless minions of orthodoxy. Thank you. That'll go. How you doing?
I didn't even have it written down. So many times I've watched this episode.
Oh, well,
I'm doing tired, Steve. How are you doing?
I also do tired. So I just assume you and your dad watch this every year on Father's Day, right?
No, and it's even less likely to happen now that he's dead. So,
you bastard. That really put a damper on your Father's Day plans, I see. But hey, at least you're spending it with me. I'm someone's dad, so
my Sunday just opened up.
So you never tried to show him this episode?
No. I mean, he was never really into science fiction,
right? Nor was mine, as we've
or fantasy. The only fantasy and science fiction he's into is religion.
No, snap! Just like my dad, man, they really could have gotten along.
Yeah.
I'm like, how can you not believe in the Force, Dad? But every Sunday you go to church and try to use your mind to like contact some cosmic being that probably isn't there.
Right. Yeah, replicating food, even though we have 3D printers, that's ridiculous, Steve. A man living inside of a whale for 8 days and turning water into wine, and that makes sense.
You wait, Mr. Beast is gonna do it. He's gonna go live in a whale for 8 days just so we can get the views.
I can't wait to see the thumbnail.
Yeah. So, ladies and gentlemen, we are watching a random Star Trek episode, Yahel's favorite, and much like last year's Father's Day episode, this one too revolves around fatherhood somewhat. It's not
quite as much of a father-son episode as last year's was.
Mm-hmm.
But last year's we watched The Visitor, which is like definitely a tearjerker. It's great.
Oh God, gut wrenching. Great episode though. You should definitely go back and listen to it. So. This
one's more lighthearted.
Yes, it is. It's a Star Trek Deep Space Nine, Season 5, Episode 25, In the Cards. And in that title, I just assumed they were going to be, I don't know, a poker game was going to be involved or something.
That's TNG.
But boy, was I wrong. Oh, they don't play poker in Deep Space Nine ever?
No, I don't think they ever do. TNG, there's a lot of poker. But in Deep Space Nine, there's like Dabo is kind of like one that gets played sometimes. There's like a Ferengi game.
Mm-hmm.
It's more about the holosuites, I guess.
Right.
In DS9. Plus, they got a war going on. They don't got time for games.
Yeah. It was kind of funny or weird, really, when the episode started off and everyone is sitting around the dinner table all sullen and depressed and stuff. I was gonna ask, like, can you give some context to this episode?
I figured once we go into the synopsis of the episode, or once I break down the episode, I'll give a little bit of context. I thought about this yesterday though, and I was like, well, I'm sure you had already watched, but I was like, man, I probably should have given you some context going into it because I don't know how much you know about it, but I'm sure you've pieced it together.
Yeah, somewhat. But yeah, so just briefly, well, you know what? Let's go ahead and jump into the Obscuratron, and we'll continue to discuss Star Trek Deep Space Nine in the cards. What do you say?
Yeah,
All right.
let's boldly go there.
Engage!
Welcome to your feature presentation.
So, like, does Cisco have like a saying that everybody talks about in memes or whatever?
Um, Not really.
He's the one captain who's unfuckwithable.
Pretty much. I mean, yeah, he doesn't. I would say Janeway's up there too, but she does have a catchphrase. But yeah, he doesn't really have a catchphrase.
Hmm.
He does have a certain way of delivering lines, but he's not in this episode very much.
No, no, he's not. Um, but just in case anyone is never, if you haven't checked out our past Deep Space Nine episodes or aren't familiar with Deep Space Nine at all, it ran from 1993 to 1999, 173 episodes in total, and was created by Rick Berman and Michael Piller.
Hmm.
Of course, off the wings of the amazing Gene Roddenberry. And as I said in the opening, we are watching In the Cards, Season 5, Episode 25, the penultimate episode of Season 5. And it premiered June 9th, 1997. So not exactly on Father's Day, if they were trying to
But
sync up
pretty
with that. Yeah,
close.
very close, though. Very close. And here's a synopsis to said episode. Jake and Nog go through hell and high water, from participating in an auction to dealing with the Dominion to receive a Willie Mays baseball card, all in order to cheer up the war-fatigued Captain Sisko. And I must say, I was very disappointed to find out that baseball still existed in the future. I was very disappointed.
Don't worry, it doesn't really.
Oh, they just watch like holodeck games or
So
something?
basically, so like Captain Cisco like loves baseball, but it's weird that he loves it. It's like, a guy that loves, I don't know, some game from like the 1500s, basically.
Right, like if you or I mean, yeah, well, is it any different than people who are into jousting at the Ren Fair?
Yes.
Oh, it is. Okay.
It seems to be less accepted.
Mm.
But yeah, so like he's kind of obsessed with baseball. He always has a baseball on his desk, and it's actually used really well throughout the series though, like his love for baseball
Mm-hmm.
and the baseball that's on his desk. They use it to symbolize a few things a few times. Like one time the Cardassians actually take the station back during the war,
Mm-hmm.
and the Federation has to like leave. And one of the main antagonists of the series, Ducat, he goes marching up to like Cisco's now old office, and he sees that he left the baseball card, or excuse me, the baseball. He picks it up, and somebody tells him something like, "Oh, I guess he forgot it," or something like that. He goes, "No, he's sending me a message that he's coming back." Because he wouldn't like
Nice.
leave it. So they use it really well throughout the series. There's actually a game, an episode about them playing a game against a team of Vulcans, and it's hilarious. Like Worf, like has a ton of great lines in it. He'll be in the outfield, and like Cisco's like trying to say like, "Hey, about it," like the usual crap,
Mm-hmm.
and like Worf just yells death to the opposition.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Nice. Speaking of Worf, this is directed by one Michael Dorn, who I think everybody knows as the voice of I Am Weasel.
Yes.
And nothing else. Nothing else. No, no. Of course, he's Worf. But as far as stuff that he's directed, he directed episodes of Star Trek Enterprise, something called Eternity, another thing called Hope and Faith, and then what one day we should definitely check out.
VIP.
Yes, an episode of
I used to
VIP.
occasionally catch that show, like, I don't, though I'd be like I don't know, nothing on. It's like 11 p.m. at night, and
Mm-hmm.
it would come on, and you just get drawn into like how bad it all
Sure,
is.
sure. You got your VIP, your Silk Stockings Junior. You're in for a good night.
Oh,
Uh,
there was a terrible like late night syndicated show that Bill Bellamy starred in also around the time. Yeah,
what?
yeah.
Which one was that?
I can't remember the name of it.
Well,
It'll come to me. Don't
how
worry.
dare you say that anything Bill Bellamy is in is less than stellar? But this was written by, or rather, the story was done by Truly Barr Clark and one Scott J. Neal. And this is their only credit ever in the world of, I guess, TV and movies, according to IMDb. Although I think we all know Truly Barr Clark, founder of the Truly White Claw ripoff, and Clark
Yes.
bars, all those things. Definitely true, not made up by me at all.
Right.
And of
Oh,
course,
Fastlane. That was the show that Bill Bellamy
what was
was
that
in.
like? Cops or bounty
Yeah, they were like
hunters?
undercover cops. I just remember not Kelly, Kelly from Saved by the Bell was on there. Tiffany Amber Thiessen.
Oh wow, man, this one I feel like it slipped under my radar. But yeah,
Yeah,
we'll have to
like
check
it
it
was
out.
like there were like three main people, like Bill Bellamy, Tiffany, and some other guy who I don't think was known at the time or since.
Yeah, clearly, just like
But
Truly
yeah,
and Scott here.
but we should check it out though, because I do remember like it would randomly have people like I remember Jay Moore was on it a few times.
Wow,
You get like random people of the early stars of the early 2000s that would pop up
sure.
as Bill Bellamy called in every favor he could.
But it just wasn't enough to save his career in the end.
Nah, it only ran for like a season or two.
Yeah, yeah, we'll definitely throw it on the list. So yeah, basically, Truly and Scott, I guess they pitched the story, and the old Ronald D. Moore, he wrote the actual teleplay, and of course, Ronald D. Moore, I'd say probably aside from Deep Space Nine, known for the Battlestar Galactica remake, and of course, Star Trek: The Next Generation, the movie Generations, and First Contact. But we could talk about him forever.
And For All Mankind, like currently that Apple TV show, which I've been meaning to get Apple TV just to like look at it, but it's supposed to be really good. It's like an alternate future. I think it's like basically what if the Russians won the space race kind of a thing or
Hmm.
something.
And I mean, he's like the showrunner on it.
I think he's the showrunner and creator.
Oh, all right. Definitely, at least worth a look. Even though I swear most of the stuff I've tried to watch from Apple TV has not been
Well,
very
I mean,
good.
supposedly this show is really good.
Okay,
And there's actually a couple of people from Star Trek working behind the scenes on it.
I'm sure there is. Why don't you tell me about some of the people who were working in front of the scenes, aka the cast?
Well, for the cast, see, there's quite a few Star Trek connections here. I don't even think you should run the bumper. There's
No.
so many. Uh, but yeah, we've got. You okay there?
Yeah, yeah, I'm good.
Avery Brooks, of course, as Captain Sisko, probably best known initially from as
Street
Hawk,
Hawk, right? Something like that.
a man called Hawk.
Yeah.
And he was in Spencer for Hire as well as Hawk. Like Hawk
Mm-hmm.
was a spinoff. You got Renee Auberjonois as Constable Odo. He's also been in a bunch of things. We've covered all these people before, so I'm not really gonna
Sure.
go into it. Terry Farrell plays Dax. By the way, she's not in this episode actually, but she normally would be.
Wait,
Um,
isn't? Oh yeah, yeah. She isn't in this one. Yeah.
Sirach Lofton plays Jake Sisko. He's one of the main players in this episode. Colum Meaney plays Chief O'Brien. Armin Shimmerman as Quark. Alexander Siddig as Julian Bashir. Nana Visitor as Kira Nerys. Jeffrey Combs as Wei Yun. We didn't talk about him last time.
I was very excited to see his name pop up in the credits.
Dude, he's all over the last few seasons of Deep Space Nine. You should just watch the whole thing.
I would love to someday. I want to. I want to
I,
watch
I think you. I
all
think
of
you would
Deep.
actually really like it.
I want to watch all of Deep Space Nine from the beginning to the end someday.
Yeah, I think you would really like it. And he actually plays like three different characters on Deep Space Nine, if I'm not
Mm-hmm.
mistaken. And there's one episode where he plays two characters in that episode. But in this particular episode, he's playing Wei Yun. I can't remember which Wei Yun number this is, because like a few of them do die, but they just make a clone of him and bring him back.
I see.
It's a funny story. Like the first episode that he was in as Wei Yun, he gets killed in it, but the producers liked him so much that they literally made it so that his race, because he was only the second person to play it, would be cloned by the founders, just so that they could bring him back because they liked his performance so much. But yeah, he's been in a million things. Great character actor, Reanimator, all those Reanimator movies. God, I mean, Creep Show, Frighteners. He's been in so much stuff.
Yeah, a lot of horror, a lot of genre stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. And the nice thing about Combs is, and he's been on Lower Decks, which is like the new Star Trek show. He was on Enterprise. He was actually like a really big recurring character on Enterprise. And the guy actually really loved Star Trek. He was a lifelong fan. We have then our other guest star, Brian Markinson playing Dr. Elias Geiger. This is a guy that's like one of those guys, really familiar face, but you don't know his name or anything, but he's been in a bunch of stuff.
Yeah, a bunch of stuff I've actually like watched. I see here, like Fargo, the series, the 2014
multiple episodes of Mad Men.
Yeah, Arrow, Battlestar Galactica, Blood and Chrome. Something called Backstabbing for Beginners. That sounds fun. But yeah, this guy's had quite the career.
Yeah, constantly working. He was on 38 episodes of Continuum, which I think is probably most of the episodes, because that show only had a few seasons. But then we've got, now, even though these last three are guest stars, they're on a lot of episodes of DS9. Aaron Eisenberg, who I'm shocked didn't end up getting cast as a regular. He's in 47 episodes of DS9, and he ends up having one of the best arcs in all of Star Trek, in my opinion. But yeah, anyways, he plays Nog, one of the Ferengis. Then we've got Chase Masterson, who plays Lita, who's a Dabo girl who at one point was dating Dr. Bashir. I'm surprised that they also just wanted to give her a paycheck or something, because she doesn't even have a line in this episode.
So that's the girl they snatched the teddy bear from.
The teddy bear from, yeah. But dude, even she ends up becoming like a major part of the war.
Well, that's like, the Ronald D. Moore way, right?
Yeah. Yeah, this show's a lot like Battlestar Galactica, which obviously, and Ron D. Moore had a lot of influence on DS9 and very obviously BSG. But yeah, they're very similar in the sense that you get a lot of characters that don't seem important the first couple seasons. Maybe they just have a line or two here and there, and then by the end, they're one of the most important characters in the whole show.
Interesting, yeah.
Yeah. So it really rewards you for paying attention, which is always nice. Then we've got Louise Fletcher playing Kai Wynn, the woman everyone loves to hate. Oscar winner for One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. Yeah, she's been in also in a million things. She passed away, I think, like 2 years ago. Yeah, 2 years ago. But yeah, she's a great actress, and she's amazing as Kai Wynn. It's funny because in this episode, they were kind of like adding some nuance to her character and not making her be quite as abrasive and combative with Cisco. But before this, they had more tension. This is one of the few times where they kind of cooperate with each other. And that is pretty much the cast.
Yeah, I'd say you rounded it up pretty nicely.
Sweet. So this was supposed to be a cheap episode. That's why it's a bottle episode. So everything takes place on the standing sets that they have. And they knew that they were going to do a big, heavy, like war-related, huge cliffhanger at the for the next episode. So they wanted something light.
I figured that. Yeah, I bet. Cheap. I was like, I bet the next episode is going to be emotionally devastating.
Pretty much. I mean, you could say that about a lot of season from 6 and 7 of DS9 in general. They still like balance it out with that, Star Trek optimism, but it's certainly darker than like TNG. Sure. But yeah, there's a lot more I could get into, but let me just go ahead and get into the story here. So to give a little context, at this point, the war isn't on quite yet. It's kind of like more of like a Cold War between the Dominion and the Federation. I don't want to get too spoilery in case there's people watching it or that end up watching it, but everyone kind of like sees where it's headed, and there's been skirmishes, and that's why when we open up on and it's not going well for the Federation, because the Dominion, they can just make the same way that they can make as many Wayuns or people of his race, they can make Jem'Hadar, which are like the soldiers for the Dominion. They're all like they're what were
the Neo
on Exo
Sapiens.
Squad? The Neo Sapiens. Yeah, don't they remind you a little bit?
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I don't know if you ever watched, how far you ever got into DS9, but the Jem'Hadar are bred to be addicted to a drug called the White, and there's a tube that's in all of them. Like when you see them, like that's constantly giving them this drug, and the only people that can make it and give it to them is the Dominion. And the founders specifically, excuse me, the Vorta, like Wayun, are the ones who administer it. So the hierarchy of the Dominion is basically you've got the founders, and then under them you've got, and they control everybody, and then under them you've got the Vorta, and then under the Vorta are the Jem'Hadar. So
All right.
Anyway, so we open up, and basically the crew of DS9 is kind of having like a dinner at maybe it was a Father's Day dinner.
Yeah, I was like, it's weird. It's like, is this supposed to be a celebration? Because everyone is like down in the dumps.
Yeah, it was supposed to be kind of like something to. It's implied at least that it was supposed to kind of like be like a fun thing to like let off some steam, but things are going so badly that everyone's just like down in the dumps. The Dominion threat has intensified. 3 ships, including the USS Tiananmen, have disappeared along the Cardassian border in just the last 3 weeks. And at this point, I don't want to give you anything away. But the Tiananmen does come back. Like that thing about it disappearing, they're dropping a little nugget. And actually the B storyline here between Sisko and Kai Wynn about like whether or not Bajor signs a non-aggression pact or whatever, they're dropping a little hint that starts to get followed up on immediately in the next episode.
All right.
So unlike TNG, there's a lot of ongoing serialized storytelling in DS9, especially from season 4 forward, even before them, but especially from season 4. I would even say season 3. Like it's very serialized with a few standalones here and there. But anyways, and like Sisko like wants to hear somebody say something positive or nice, and like he's like oh no, tell me about your vacation to Bajor, and he's like, or your trip to Bajor. He's like, well, I canceled it because there's been a 75% increase in theft of food and medical supplies, and he's like, I haven't seen it since. And Sisko's like, since what? Well, since the Cardassians, abandoned the station or something. Since everybody abandoned
9/11, basically.
yeah. Basically, the same things that happened just before the Cardassian occupation of Bajor is like seems to be happening again, or that's
and
the
like
move.
Worf was like, oh man, my business, my food business was going great, and then COVID came along, and
basically,
and everything
right?
went downhill.
But so the mood is gloomy. There is a bit of a funny thing here where, like, once they, like I think Bashir's the first one to excuse himself. Everybody starts kind of leaving, and then like Sisko tells Worf, like, Worf, you've been who's just like basically staring at a wall. He's like, Worf, you've been relieved, and he's like, oh,
right.
like so because he hates parties and
classic
social
Worf.
gatherings. Yeah, it's also Worf is not very much in this episode either because he's directing, which is pretty typical whenever a member of the cast directs an episode. Sure. So then at the end of the scene, Sisko gets a message that Kai Wynn is visiting, which is just like the icing on the shit cake.
Oh, yeah.
You can tell by his expression. He's like, God damn it. But, Jake Sisko has a plan to lift his father's spirits. Or actually, Worf, Sisko, and Nog are now at Quark's bar. Nog, by the way, is the nephew of Quark. And they're just talking about how gloomy and down in the dumps everybody is, and Jake wants to cheer him up. And Quark comes by. He's like, hey, I expect to see you all at the auction. By the way, this is the second time an auction has been held at Quarks. And he's like, oh, look what's going to be on there. So he gives him a pad, and like Nog's like, there's a bunch of junk. He's like, starts listing off the crap that's on there, and he says, and there's also a Willie Mays rookie year baseball card. And Jake flips out. He's like, he says, hey, this will be perfect for my dad to cheer up his spirits. And he's like, all we have to do is get this card. How hard can it be? And that's kind of our cold open.
Yes, but can we just acknowledge like Jake's outfit? Like
he's always got amazing outfits.
You think it's amazing? I don't know.
This is one of the better ones, sadly, and it's not good.
So brown, and there's like a vest. Like I can't even describe it.
Dude, they're usually like purple and all these like weird colors.
It doesn't even feel like futuristic. I was like,
it's very weird.
It feels like something a hipster would wear in like Washington State or something, or Portland. There you go.
A lot of the civilian clothing, especially for like humans and Federation citizens and TNG and DS9, is not good.
Clearly, they've never read Ravage 2099.
Yeah. I mean, this is what happens when you don't have to work for money. You don't have people, I guess, working as fashion designers.
Right. Well,
and
they should have computers to be able to fabricate whatever.
They do. That's who replicates their clothes.
So Jake went to a computer and was like, give me a mix between like Han Solo and a lumberjack. And that's what came out.
Yeah. But this is one of his more subdued outfits, believe it or not.
Okay. All right, moving on.
All right, so Jake and Nog are talking. By the way, they share. They're roommates. Okay. So that's why they're like in the same quarters. So Jake is trying to convince Nog to let him use his money, his gold press platinum that he saved up over his lifetime to purchase the card. And it's pretty funny because Nog is like, it's not my fault you humans don't have money. And Jake says something like, well, we've grown beyond that. We work to better ourselves. And it's actually a direct quote from Star Trek First Contact that he says. It's exactly what Picard says. And both lines were written by Ron Moore. Right. He was basically making fun of himself. He said in an AOL chat that anytime he can make fun of something he's written, he, jumps on it. So yeah, pretty funny. Like Nog's like Jake's like, we don't need money. We work to better ourselves. And then Nog's like, well, then you certainly don't need mine.
Yes. Yeah. This was a pretty snappily written episode. I really liked a lot of the dialogue in it.
Yeah. All the Jake and Nog stuff throughout the series, even from the first episode when they are basically like little kids. You know me, I hate kids and I hate kid actors, but these two are always excellent. Yeah. But yeah, they have a great rapport back and forth, and eventually Jake convinces Nog by guilt tripping him into it. He's like, don't you want to do something for Captain Sisko, which is referring, and he says, he's the one that gave you a chance to even get into Starfleet, which basically stems from the fact that there's an episode a couple seasons back where like Nog begs Sisko to let him, to write a recommendation letter to join Starfleet. And he needs a recommendation letter from an officer because Ferengi aren't part of the Federation. So he can't just normally apply like a normal person. And Nog was kind of known as in the beginning of the series for being a bit of a petty thief and this and that. And Ferengi are kind of known for being like shady, And Nog makes this like really, really great impassioned speech that'll bring a tear to your eye to Captain Sisko and blah, blah. So he ends up writing letters. So anyways, he's, basically that's what he's referring to when he's guilting him into it. So finally, Jake agrees, or Nog agrees. Then we see Kai Wynn is meeting with Captain Sisko, and she reveals that she's there because the Dominion has requested a meeting with her. And they go on a walk along the promenade, and basically they have this conversation about how they're both concerned about how Bajor is going to cope with a pending invasion from the Dominion. The Kai tells her she's concerned that with the conflict between the Dominion and the Federation escalating, that Bajor could get caught in the middle, because Bajor is also not part of the Federation. Basically, the Bajorans had been like basically they were like the Jewish people who went through a Holocaust at the hands of the
I see.
Cardassians, and they've been rebuilding. And the station used to be run by the Cardassians, but now the Bajorans have it, and they basically asked the Federation to come in and handle it because the Bajorans just don't have the infrastructure to do that. And part of Cisco's assignment there is to try and like basically guide the Bajorans into building themselves up to be able to join the
I
Federation.
see.
So, just to give you even more background. Anyways, so they're concerned that Bajor could get caught in the middle and it could lead to the destruction of their world. So Cisco says, I'm going to do whatever I can to safeguard Bajor, blah, blah, blah. Funny enough, this is like the most serious part of the episode, like their plot, but it's the B plot of the episode. Meanwhile, we're cutting that where the auction has started, and Nog has 5 bars of gold pressed latinum. And they end up getting to the auction, or excuse me, they get to the part of the auction where they're going to do the card. It's part of an Andorian chest that includes the Vulcan bracelet, some Bajoran mandala, and
a CDI.
I don't know, something else. And a CDI, yes. Bidding begins on the chest, but basically, like, they start bidding, and Nog tells Jake, "Don't worry, they're getting this guy that's bidding against us. He's going to stop at 2 bars." And sure enough, somebody says 2 bars, and the guy that's been bidding against him says it drops out. So then Nog bids like 2 bars and like 5 strips or whatever of latinum, and then the other guy that's bidding against him bids like 3 bars. Right. And then Nog's like, "Oh shit!" And then Jake's like 3 bars, and then the guy says 10 bars. So obviously, like Nog and Jake are out. They have nothing that they don't have that much money. So this guy who you can already tell by the way he's like bidding and sitting and looking around, like that he's just like paranoid and like just a weird guy.
Oh man, I will say I enjoyed Dr. Geiger. I did. He's basically great. I would say Starfleet or Star Trek equivalent of the comic book guy almost. He's even got a receding hairline going on, and he's at the part coming up where. So I don't want to jump ahead, but basically, he sends them a request to meet him in his quarters. Like, it's so creepy.
Yeah. So, Nog is basically like trying to convince Jake that, they've lost the card, but Jake's like determined to like figure out a way to do this. They end up trying to talk to Geiger as he's leaving the auction, but he like, starts like basically he refuses to get involved. He tells them that he refuses to get involved with whoever they work for. And the people they work for, and they're like, "We don't work for anybody." He's like, "Oh, you can't tell me you're not part of the soulless minions of Orthodox."
Yes, the soulless minions. Why didn't we call our band that?
It's such a great name, and the initials would be Smooth.
Smooth. Nice. Yeah.
Anyway, so he gets in the turbo lift. He won't talk to them. Then we see that Wei Yun, aka Jeffrey Combs, arrives on the station as the Dominion representative to meet with Kai Wynn. And basically, like, him and Cisco have a pretty fun little exchange where, like, Wei Yun, it's funny because even later when Wei Yun, the war is on and whatever, Wei Yun most of the time puts on these, like, over-the-top, like, pleasantries. Even when he's, like, being insulting to you or threatening to you, he's somehow very pleasant about it, which just makes it, like, feels so weird, like in a good way.
Yeah, like a sort of a sociopath kind of thing. Yeah, I definitely got that from that. It was good stuff.
Yeah, he's like he says something like, "Oh, it's so good. I'm so glad to see you." And Cisco is like quips and like, "I'm not." And he's like, "Oh, I'm so glad that you feel more comfortable, that our relationship has improved to the point where you can make jokes." He's like, "I'm not joking." And before you can turn that into a compliment, let me tell you, blah, blah. He like runs them down. It's pretty funny. But anyways, so yeah, they're there to meet with Kai Wynn. Next scene, we see that the man who bought the card, Dr. Elias Geiger, he's requested a meeting with Jake and Nog. Nog tells Jake that, "Hey, we got a message to meet him at 1800. Jake says, "Oh, that's like in 10 minutes. Let's go." So the message said that like he was willing to like sell the card or whatever. But once they get up there, like Nog tries to open negotiations, but he says the card's not for sale. but he's willing to trade for it. And he hands them this like crazy list of
Medical
supplies.
supplies and sciencey stuff. Yeah.
And Geiger, like, just, I love, like, the way they wrote him to make him seem weird because he's like, I'm willing to trade the baseball card minus the original packaging and chewing gum.
Wait, but I just thought that stuff didn't come with it, though.
Well, I think that's how Quark, like, when he was, like, describing the card, I believe that's how he described it because he says it's from, like, a 1951 set. Like, he does a description of the card.
Yeah, I mean, that is, if he wants the wrapping and the chewing gum, that's freaking hilarious. 100%. Very comic book guy.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's just a guy being weird, and it's great. So, you know, Jake agrees, but, you know, they ask him, but he says it's going to take some time, and then Nog, being like the Starfleet officer that he is like, wait a minute. Some of the stuff is like medical supplies. We can't just like get you this stuff without knowing what you're making, which is great that they like address that. And then Dr. Geiger says, let me tell you something. Well, he actually says something like, very well.
Yeah, like, let me ask you a question. Like, do you want to die?
He's like right up to their faces. Yeah. And the way like Nog says, no. Like you didn't know what the answer to the question was supposed to be. And then he goes to tell him that basically he has a theory that the reason why people die is because they get older, and the reason why they get older is because cells get bored. Your cells in your body get bored from doing the same thing over and over, and the key to immortality is to just keep them busy with little games, and that's why he's creating a cellular regeneration and entertainment chamber.
I love that. He almost sounds like a either like a tabletop gamer or possibly even like a gamer. It's like I must be entertained or I will die. Like it's hilarious.
Yeah. It's so funny, and the prop for the chamber is actually really nice. I meant to see what that was from. I did notice that like one of his like computer terminals or whatever is from one of the original series movies. Oh, nice. And I was like, wow, that's pathetic that I recognize that. So yeah, Geiger gives them like a really long list. They need like a bunch of stuff. I'll kind of like go over the stuff they need as we're going through each scenario of them trying to like get the stuff, but they get to work. The first thing they try to get is a neodymium power cell from a Cardassian phase coil inverter.
That's what my Prius needed this morning.
Oh, okay, that makes sense. So they visit Chief O'Brien, who's like down in one of the cargo bays, and they ask him about it, and he says something like, there's one around here, but I'm sure there's one around here,
but you kids.
I don't know.
Get out of here.
Yeah, and he asks what it's for, but he's like, oh, it's a secret. Yeah. Jake says it's a secret. Nog's about to tell him, and Nog like gives him this look like, what the fuck? Just tell him what it's for. But you know, Chief O'Brien says he's too busy recalibrating the EPS regulators to help them find it.
You got to do that.
And then Nog
got to keep them regulated.
Yeah, you do. Then Nog, you know, being a Ferengi, he starts negotiating and strikes a deal. He's like, isn't there anything you'd rather be doing, Chief? You know, if you could be anywhere right now. He's like, oh, of course I'd rather be somewhere else doing something. He's like, no, specifically. He's like, oh, I'd rather be kayaking at the holiday.
Can I just say, that is not where my mind went. I was just like, he's going to be wishing he was at the bar having a drink.
Well, that would probably be the other favorite thing he'd rather be doing, having a drink with his best friend, Bashir. But, you know, Bashir, as we find out later, is busy himself. But yeah, and the fun thing is, like, this whole thing about, like, hey, wouldn't you rather be kayaking? One of the first times we see Chief O'Brien in Star Trek The Next Generation, which is where his character's from, we see him in sick bay because he got hurt kayaking in the holodeck.
Well, man, that's a great callback. I'll forego the lack of Irish stereotyping for the callback.
Are they known for kayaking?
No, for drinking. you bastard.
I just wanted you to admit your stereotype.
I'm a big old racist. You know it.
But just against the Irish, so it's fine.
That's where part of my lineage comes from. So I'm allowed. It's okay.
Yes. Yeah, it's fine. It's fine. But yeah, and like the kayaking thing actually comes up all throughout like TNG a few times, and this is not the first time it's come up on
I have to say,
DS9
he
either.
doesn't
But
look like the kayaking type. But hey, what do
well,
I know?
it's funny that you say that because like I can't remember if it's in DS9 or TNG, but somebody kind of says something like that to him, or like you go kayaking, kind of in disbelief, and he goes, "Hey, it's great exercise." It's like, all right.
All right, whatever you say.
Listen, man, there's zero plot holes when it comes to Chief O'Brien and kayaking. It is airtight.
Yeah, you can't argue with that.
All right. So, anyways, Jake and Nog, Nog tells Jake, "Hey, we'll take care of regulating the EPS,
Hmm.
whatever." And you may wonder, okay, that makes sense that Nog knows how to do it. Why does Jake, who's not in Starfleet, how can he even help with this?
I mean, that thought didn't even cross my mind. I mean,
Well, Steve, had it crossed my mind, your mind, I would have told you that earlier in Deep Space Nine, Jake was training under Chief O'Brien because he was maybe going to go into Starfleet. So he's actually done
well,
this
I was just
before.
gonna say, I mean, that's great that they have that there, to keep everything nice and airtight. I just assumed whatever task O'Brien was doing was just so boring and mundane that pretty much anyone
Right.
could take care of it.
Yeah, that too. Yeah, it's not like he's working on the warp core or something, you know.
Clearly.
Fuck you. Uh, so, anyways, Nog says, "Hey, well, how about we do this for you, and then you can go to the holosuite."
Hmm.
And Chief O'Brien's like, "Oh, thanks so much. Really, you'll do that for me? I owe you one." And Nog says, "Well, about that power cell." And then Chief's like, "Oh, yeah, I think I know where one is. I'll have it sent to
Three
you,
quarters. Yeah.
in an
Yeah.
hour or something." Yeah. So then Jake and Nog are, I think this is when it happens where I didn't put it in my notes, where basically Jake's not, yeah, Nog is like, "Jake, why didn't you tell him
Hmm.
like about this?" Which again is something I'm glad that they brought up. Because otherwise I would have been like, that's a bit of a plot hole, which is like, why didn't you just tell him what we need this for? Everybody would love to help out
Sure.
Cisco. And he's like, well, if we tell, I want it to be a surprise. And if we tell him, he's going to tell this person, he's going
And
to tell
so
this
on and
person, blah,
so
blah.
on. Yeah.
And this has actually, which is something that actually has happened before in previous episodes.
Nice.
So again, just great
Sure.
callbacks. The next thing that they try to get is some medical supplies, 5 liters of anaerobic metabolites suspended in hydrosaline solution.
I mean, I put that in my protein shake every morning.
Yeah, yeah. And I love how they made like so many of these things sound like even more techno babbly than they
Oh
usually
yeah.
are. Just to be like Geiger needs the weirdest
Right, right,
shit.
right.
So they need these 5 liters, and then they so they go to Dr. Bashir's office in sick bay, and he repeats back like, "What could you possibly need with 5 liters of blah blah blah?" And Nog is like, and he's like, "Sorry, I'm too busy to help right now." And Nog tries the same thing. He's like, "Doctor, isn't there something else you'd rather be doing
Wait,
right
doesn't Jake
now?"
try it this time?
I think
Yeah,
you're right. I think it is
yeah.
Jake. And then Bashir says, "No, this is the
This
first.
is literally what I
This
want to
is
be
the
doing. It's my
This is the first
yeah.
time I've had a chance to like work on this research that I've been doing, and first time in like 6 months. There's nothing I'd rather be doing right
Right.
now in the world." And then so funny. Uh, However, like Nog kind of keeps probing him. He's like, "Hey, you look like you've been a little down lately." And Bashir's like, "Well, now that you mention it, I guess I have been." He's like, "Isn't there something that could cheer you up?" And Bashir says,
Yeah,
Kukalaka.
I thought it was at first I was like kookaburra, like the bird or something, but
Yeah, and Jake and Nog are both like, "Kuka, what?" And he's like, his teddy bear. Says that when he was dating Lita, Bashir let her borrow Kukalaka, and she never gave it
hmm.
back. And the way he says it, like he's so
It's
depressed
yeah, I
about
mean,
this.
there was a Simpson episode all about Mr. Burns missing his teddy bear. So I guess
Yeah,
adults with teddy bears, it is a thing, at least in TV shows.
yeah. So Nog manages to break in. Nog and Jake break into her
Oh, which is
quarters.
perfectly
Not
reasonable.
not the first time Nog has broken into
Hmm.
quarters. His first time since becoming a Starfleet officer, I'm sure. But yeah, like Ferengi are known for being able to pick locks because of their ears. Even though these are all electronic, they're like, "Oh,
They can
this got us
hear
into
it.
the right
Yeah, I
peeps."
get it. Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, like there's one time where like Quark is like gonna pick a lock, and it's like an old style, like a
Mm-hmm.
safe from like the
Mm-hmm.
60s, and somebody's like, you can pick that, and he just points at his ears and goes, really? And he's like,
Nice.
pretty funny. Anyways, so they retrieve the teddy bear while she's sleeping. Then while Jake and Nog are like running around, keep running around, we see Kai Wynn is discussing Wei Yun's proposal with Cisco. She tells him that the Dominion wants to sign a non-aggression pact with Bajor. She says that she recognizes that Starfleet can't possibly protect Bajor from the full strength of the Dominion, but also knows that allying with the Dominion could make Bajor the next world that gets conquered. Basically, there's been a pattern of like the Dominion. They don't just bring you into their alliance. They basically run your world and do what they want
So
with it.
like a tech
And in the
company,
long,
basically. Yeah, gotcha.
yes, in the long run, it's usually not going to be
Hmm.
good for you. Cisco advises that she should stall for a time and keep Bajor's options open. And I like that she says like, "Well, for what reason?" And he's like, "I'm not even sure yet." Like, but at least it'll give us some time. She puts her hand on his ear, which you must have been like, "What is
Right,
this?"
but then I got it. Like that's basically how she tells if people are lying or not, right?
It's a thing called Bajorans have this thing called the paw, where they refer to as a paw, and they like kind of sense it by touching people's ears. It's never really like defined, and the only people that really ever do it are like the Vedics and the
Mm-hmm.
Kai. The Vedics are like also part of the religious sect that's also involved in the government, because for them like religion and government's all intertwined. Anyways, and Cisco is the emissary of the
Mm-hmm.
prophets in the wormhole that the Bajorans worship. So Cisco has a lot of pull with the Bajoran
Okay.
people. So she puts her hand on his ear, and she agrees. Anyways, now we're back to Jake and Nog, and they deliver a bunch of the requested items to
Mm-hmm.
Geiger. Geiger then removes like a chip from one of the devices that they delivered and uses it to activate a console panel on the wall, which then begins making like this humming sound. And then it pans up, and I love how they ended up tying everything together. It pans up to the quarters above, and Wei Yun is being where Wei Yun is like staying at, and he hears like the humming underneath him, and the sound, basically gets the attention of both him and his Jem'Hadar guards, who are like wondering what's going
Yeah,
on.
well, I mean, you have to mention sort of the funny image of these alien types with their
Oh yeah,
ears to the floor, trying to listen in to what's going on.
yeah. And for those who have never seen the Jem'Hadar, they basically kind of look like Doomsday
Oh
from
yeah, they
DC
do
Comics a
look
little
like
bit.
Doomsday. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So they're very like vicious, aggressive looking like aliens. I love but by the way, what do you think of the Jem'Hadar character design and Wayun
I
for that
mean, they
matter?
all look pretty interesting. I mean, I was going to ask you to explain to me exactly what Jeffrey Combs was because I've never seen a character like that in what little Star Trek that I've watched. But all the makeup
Yeah.
effects were great. I was also going to ask, can you pinpoint the time when? I mean, did they always use computer animation for the ships? Because I noticed they were computer animated for this season. Like, did they? Was there a point where they went from like models to CGI at some point?
Yeah, I believe it's around season 3 that they begin using
Mm-hmm.
CG. But it's usually in the earlier seasons when they start using it mixed in with
Mm.
models. And I want to say by season 4, it's all CG except when they use stock shots of the
Right.
station sometimes. But yeah, and one thing I really liked about the CG stuff that they did on DS9, and to me, why it holds up better than a lot of CG from the 90s, is that rather than try to make the CG look as realistic as possible, they tried to just make it look like models
Mm.
you know so it kind of holds up better
Yeah, it looked good.
because there's more of a seamless transition. You can tell, especially like sometimes there'll be like a really complex move or whatever that you're like, well, I know they couldn't do that with a
Mm-hmm.
model. But yeah, especially by season 6 they've really dialed in the CG, and the stuff looks really good to this day by season 6. And they have these huge crazy like fights like with like hundreds of ships that just couldn't do before.
Right.
In my opinion, the season 6 and 7 CG on DS9 for the space battles looks better than the CG on Battlestar Galactica, in my
Oh
opinion.
my, I'm gonna have to check that out.
They're both great and they both still hold up pretty well, but to me the DS9 one, as far as realism looks, I don't know. To me it holds
Okay.
up. Uh, where were we at? Oh yeah, so and it was also established in like an earlier episode that Wayun, Jeffrey Combs' character, like his whole race, have bad eyes but great
Mm-hmm.
ears. So this is kind of another little callback to that. Um, and I think you should know, by the way, we only see like 4 or maybe 5 different Wayun, excuse me, of his
Mm-hmm.
race, of the Vorta throughout DS9. So we don't see a lot of them, but one of them is played by Iggy
Oh,
Pop,
weird. Hmm.
and he is amazing.
Nice.
Anyway, oops, I just accidentally lost my place. Sorry about that. Blah 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 blah. So okay. So later we see that Nog agreed to like basically like Jake and Nog are like in their quarters and Nog has agreed to filter out subharmonic distortion from Worf's Klingon opera. Worf's been listening to Klingon opera since TNG.
Wow.
So this is again a continuation of it. Um, and he sings it too sometimes. So, and Nog, this is great because obviously he's got those big Ferengi ears. So if anybody can do this, it's him. He's got sensitive ears. And then Jake is like, oh, well, I need you to be quiet, Nog, because like the opera is playing really loud. I need you to turn that down because I'm trying to help Kira by coming up with jokes to punch up her speech to the Bajoran Agricultural Ministry a little bit.
Now, is
And
Jake suited for that job?
Jake is a
Oh,
writer.
that's right. Yeah, okay.
You fool. Did you forget already from
It's
the
been
one
an
episode I
entire
know you've
year.
seen?
Come on.
The episode's all about him being a writer, or a good chunk of it. Anyways, so yeah, he's a writer,
Okay.
and he's known for being a good writer by this point in the show. So, however, Jake makes like a terrible. He like says, "Nog, what do you think about this line?" And he's like, "Oh, a lot of people think that something blah 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 agricultural is dry, and I never understood why they thought something involving water, a topic involving water, was so dry. Like it's like a
Yeah.
terrible like
Awful
dad
joke,
joke or
yeah.
whatever." Yeah, and Nog like has a funny line back or something, but that I should have written down. But it's just a pretty funny
Yeah,
scene.
they're basically getting on each
But
other's nerves with all of the like their little sort of team up is falling apart just a little bit, just a little.
yeah, it's just a little bit of
Yeah.
tension, and you know, this is just like exactly how like two
Sure.
friends in their like early
Absolutely.
20s, would be trying to late teens, probably actually probably more like
Hmm.
18 or 19, how they would like be doing this,
Absolutely.
and their
Yep.
roommates. I think you were probably the only roommate I ever had that didn't get on my nerves.
Aw.
Um,
Likewise, buddy.
that I can remember at least. There's a lot of drinking.
That's right.
All right. So now we see that they've collected the last of the supplies. They go up to Geiger's quarters, but the door's like not opening, or he's not answering. Then Nog says, "Hey, this is unlocked." He opens the quarters, and dun dun dun, the quarters are completely
That
empty.
was
There's nothing there. No
that was
Geiger,
great.
nothing.
Very I don't know, Murder She Wrote ending sort of. I don't know.
It was a nice little like
Yeah.
twist. Yeah, it felt like something you would see like in a
Keep you through
mystery or
the
something.
commercial break. Make sure you come back.
Yeah, yeah. So now Jake and Nog visit Odo, who's the security chief. For those that don't know, security chief on the station, and Odo insists that there was never anyone with that name registered to those quarters, or anyone at all, recently. And then when Odo hears about the Jake and Nog try to explain to him about Geiger and that he was making a cellular regeneration and entertainment chamber, and like Jake and Nog at this point they've kind of bought in to like Geiger's like
Sure.
idea or whatever, or at least they don't find it as ridiculous,
Right.
because like Nog is even like, cells get bored and tired. They explain like the whole thing to him, and Odo is like,
Yeah.
like he doesn't believe them, and so he like starts reading them a list of charges that he could give them, including making like a false report and wasting police time, and scares them out of his office. So pretty funny scene. What did you think about because this is pretty much all we see of Odo for the most part outside of the very
Yeah, it's
beginning.
great. I mean, he's the authority. Well, it's funny. They sort of get two sort of dust-ups with authority figures. Odo,
Oh yeah.
I would say, is definitely the nicer one. Although, I mean, he's not exactly known for his sense of humor or anything. So, of course, like he wouldn't, you're coming me telling
You
me about a weird entertainment cell thing. Like, get out of my office. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Now, you would say that having not seen all of DS9, I will say like as the series goes on, like Odo definitely finds his sense of humor, and not that he's never like a jolly guy or
Right.
whatever, but he definitely like starts to crack more
What's the
jokes and
deal with shapeshifters?
not like that,
Of course
but
not.
like
It's called a joke.
like very dry, almost like British quips,
Nice.
is what I would
Yes.
say. It works really well for him. Okay, on their way out of Odo's office, they see that Kai Wynn is talking to a Vedic, and they realize that the Vedic was the one who was initially bidding against them in the auction. And they're thinking, oh, she must have been after the Bajora Mandala that was part of that auction block that had the card in it. So he's like, okay, I bet because she's known for being shady, especially like I said, if you had watched some of the other stuff that she's done before, you could understand why Jake would think she might have done. I mean, the kidnapping is a little
Sure.
much, maybe a touch, but I could still buy it. So the dude Jake's like, oh, I bet she kidnapped Geiger to try and get the card, or try and get the mandala because they lost the bid. So Wei Yun meets again with Kai Wynn, and she tells him, hey, you're gonna have to wait until she's given a report to the first minister, basically just buying
Sure.
time before giving him an answer. He says that Wei Yun says that he understands and that he and she are very much alike. Now she puts her hand on his ear the same way she did with Cisco, and after a moment she says, "No, we are nothing
Right.
alike," and then leaves. And this is the kind of bitchy attitude she usually has with everybody. Like earlier, actually, does it when she goes up to into Cisco's office? Doesn't she like get let in there by
Yes.
Kira?
And then
And she tells Kira, "You may leave now,
right.
child."
Yeah.
And Kira's like, "This
Yeah, and I
bitch."
was definitely getting those vibes, not even knowing the character. It was all presented in
Yeah,
a way that, even if you hadn't watched very much Deep Space Nine up until this episode, you could still get what was going on.
yeah. You get her character. Yeah, yeah. Louise Fletcher does an amazing job. Okay, so she tells him that we're nothing alike and leaves. And then shortly afterward, in the corridor, Jake and Nog confront her. Uh, then the next scene is like Cisco is yelling at Jake and Nog, and he's furious. And he says that he accuses them of he finds out that they essentially accused the religious leader of Bajor, the Kai, of burglary and kidnapping.
I will say
Uh,
I was kind of I would have liked to have seen that scene more because they sort of just glossed over it, right? And then you get to see Captain Sisko's
aftermath.
reaction. I just would have liked to have seen how Jake and Nog would have just sort of meandered into that conversation. It's like, "Hello there, Kaiwin. Did you steal it? Did you get Geiger? Did you get him?"
You know, I mean, yeah, I kind of would have liked to see it, but in another way, I kind of feel like it's better this way because I don't know, it's probably like less funny than whatever your imagination would conjure up, So in a way, I'm kind of glad that they left it to imagination, and like the way the audience finds out is just like because it is kind of ridiculous to confront. This is like confronting the Pope, who also is like a semi-government head,
Right.
of an entire planet,
That's why they're
Um,
able to get away with so much stuff. But that's another
yeah.
it's another podcast.
Yes. So, like I said, Cisco is furious, and Nog is kind of like trying to explain, but Jake keeps like shutting him up, because he doesn't want his dad to find out. He still wants it to be a surprise. And then he's like, "All right, he's like, tell me what happened." He's like, "Okay, well, Jake or Nog and I were at Quark's,
We were
and
drunk.
well,
Yeah.
we got drunk. Maybe we got drunk." And Nog's like, "What?" And then Jake's like, "There's no sense in lying now. It won't help." And Nog is like, Captain, I just want to say that I had nothing. And Captain Sisko's like, shut up,
Yeah,
basically.
and then
And that
Cisco says, "My faith in both of you was misplaced," and I was like, "Oh man."
Yeah,
The way he
yeah.
delivers it, I'm like, God, that's way worse than like Odo.
Yeah, and he's like basically confines them to
hmm
quarters and angrily
hmm
dismisses them.
But I
You
love
know,
how in sort of like classic these kind of stories, be it in movies or TVs, they're just like, if as long as we get the card, everything will be okay. Like it's the
right? Well, I assume well, we'll
yeah
get to that. We'll get to the end. And then now Jake and Nog are bickering and arguing again as they enter a turbo lift, which for those that know is basically a fancy feature elevator.
right.
uh, and while they're in the turbo lift, they suddenly get beamed out of the turbo lift and onto Wei Yun's ship. Dun dun dun. Cut to commercial. What did you think about this?
Oh,
The cut to
I was
commercial
very
here.
surprised just because it's not every day, at least for me, that I see someone beamed from one random section of either the Enterprise or the Deep Space Nine into wherever. I just wasn't expecting it, so it was
Yeah,
interesting.
yeah. And this doesn't really happen a lot like in this way either. Like generally, where you're getting
Right.
beamed somewhere. But yeah, I really like how in this episode all of the uh, the moments before going to commercial break for the next act, they all have like a little mini
As they should
cliffhanger,
be,
which
as they should.
which is what Star Trek usually does. But I feel like in this episode
They're really
they're
good.
bigger than
Yeah.
usual. Yeah, they're really like, well, like if you were thinking, okay, after when it goes to commercial, I'm gonna pause and I'm gonna go, take care of whatever. You're gonna be like, damn, all right, let me see what happens in the next act.
Right. I'm gonna have to rub one out another time.
All right, so we're in the final act, and we're on Wei Yun's ship. Wei Yun asks Jake and Nog about their connection to Dr. Geiger.
Mhm.
Jake explains that they were only trying to acquire a baseball card, but Wei Yun doesn't believe him. He tells him that he knows about the polarized particles coming from
Right.
Geiger's room, and that Jake and Nog have been having secret meetings with senior staff on the station.
Oh, I have a quick question I was going to ask you earlier. Since we're here, okay, so Odo said that there was no information that Dr. Geiger ever existed. Do you think that Dominion erased him from like the Star Trek log, or was Geiger just never registered? What happened there?
I don't know. It is left very ambiguous. I could see it maybe being that Geiger somehow had the records altered because
He's
as
very
we know, he's
paranoid.
very
Yeah.
suspicious and paranoid. It's also though not the kind of thing that would usually, that would get out from under Odo that he wouldn't
hmm
notice. So that is a little odd. And I guess if there's one plot hole, it's maybe that. But also Odo just like doesn't believe. Odo would have probably followed up on it if the story that he got from Jake and Nog didn't sound so
hmm
stupid.
Right.
You know.
Good point.
So I don't know. But yeah, it's hard to tell what happened. I would, if I had to guess, the Dominion wiped the records since they kidnapped him. That to me makes the most sense.
Okay.
And because I would assume that Dr. Geiger would have had to register, or maybe would have just done so under a
Yeah, you
false name.
can't. Yeah, yeah. I mean, I imagine it's got to be pretty hard to fake your identity in the future of Star Trek. But
Oh, people do it. I mean, there's ways to do it. I mean, more often than not, they get caught because the plot requires it.
of
They get found
course,
out.
right?
But there's ways to do it if you're not doing anything nefarious, like I don't know, murdering someone, which is usually what somebody does, and then they get so there's investigation, they get
Sure.
found out. But anyway, we find out that yeah, Wei Yun is like, hey, I know you've been meeting with senior officials, which is just them meeting with Chief
Right.
O'Brien and Worf just to do these like chores
hmm
for them, to get the baseball card. And he also then says, and then you met with Kai Wynn immediately after she left, my room. So I love it because like yeah, you can see how Wei Yun is like, what the
Makes
hell? And
sense. Yeah.
Wei Yun knows that hey, you're in Starfleet, and hey, you're the commander's son, of the station. He thinks that they're like spies. I think he
Right.
accuses them of
Yes.
being spies specifically. So then the Jem'Hadar bring Geiger into the room, carrying the auction box, and revealing that it was Wei Yun who had kidnapped him. Geiger, seeing Jake and Nog, he accuses them of betraying him to the soulless minions of Orthodoxy before he is relieved of the box. Like they
Oh,
take the
but
box.
I want to talk about that, how they sort of take it from him. He goes, like, if you want my work, you're not going to get it without a. He's like, he's about to say fight, and then that monster thing, I can't remember what they're called.
The Jem'Hadar.
Just delicately puts his like alien hand on his shoulder, and he's just like, oh, here you go. He just, very comic book guy. Very comic book guy.
Yeah. And this guy playing Geiger, man, he's so good because like it's written very silly, right? And it's easy to play it in a way where it comes off kind of like too cornballish and silly.
It's like
he makes it
he
work.
believes like that the soulless minions really are coming. He makes you believe it, and it's a great job.
Yeah. So then Wei Yun begins to like examine the contents of the box. And he's again being like over the top, disingenuously kind, saying, yeah, he would like them to be friends, but they have to be truthful to each other. So, seeing no other option, apparently, Jake says that he and Nog are working for Starfleet Intelligence. He's like, all right, you got us. He's like, we're working for Starfleet Intelligence, and he tells him this absurd story about hunting for a mysterious man from the future. He's like, as of 5 days ago, that man that you see in that card, Willie Mays, he didn't exist until he suddenly appeared in that card. Basically, he tells them that they're trying to set the timeline straight, basically. Right. And trying to track him down. That the only clue they have is this baseball card. And then Wei Yun says, he like looks at them astonished. Like his reaction is great. He goes, I believe you. And then Nog goes, you do?
Yeah, very
disbelief.
Classic.
And then he goes,
sort
yes.
of, when a character vamps and like BS's and stuff, and then we're on the edge of our seat seeing if they're going to believe it or not. And
yeah. And then Wei Yun says, yes, I believe your original story. That you're just trying to get this for your dad. So then Wei Yun turns over to Geiger, and who, like, he starts asking him questions, and Geiger, and asks for an explanation of what he was doing. And Geiger does to think to Wei Yun, well, let me ask you a question. Do you want to die? And starts explaining the machine to him. And Wei Yun is very interested.
It.
And yeah, well, and part of the reason is because the Vorta, his whole species, even though they worship the founders, do you know who the founders are?
Jeff Jarrett, the founder of TNA.
No. Okay, so I don't want to reveal to you who the founders are. Okay, I'll save that for when you watch DS9. But they basically they're worshipped as gods by like the Jem'Hadar, the Vorta, but they are aliens. So basically, Wei Yun, even though he like worships him, he knows that he's disposable because, as you see there's several times throughout the series where they don't like the way this Wei Yun is doing whatever, and they'll just kill him because they'll just make another one. So like him hearing that there's something to live forever, that's like right up his alley. So it makes total sense that he'd be interested. And then Nog said, as they're talking, Nog's like, are we free to go? And he's like, yeah. As Jake and Nog starts walking out, Wei Yun says, aren't you forgetting something? And lets them take the card. And then we get, I'm sorry, did you have
I was just going to say, at first they were like scared. They thought, maybe he was going to try to pull something else. But yeah, they give him the card. And it was very, very satisfying that they finally got the thing they were working so hard for.
Yeah. And then we cut to like this montage that's narrated by a captain's log. I have the captain's log, and if you don't mind, I'm going to read it because I think it sums up everything very nicely. Captain's log, stardate, blah, blah, blah. 2 days ago, the station felt like a tomb. I've never seen so many of my crew depressed at the same time. But for some reason, it now seems as though a new spirit has swept through the station, as if someone had opened the door and let a gust of fresh air blow through a musty old house. And as he's saying this, we see like I said, montage. Oh my God, I just said the word. A montage of like you see Chief O'Brien and his kayaking
Which is
gear.
Hilarious.
It's just terrible, and I'm pretty sure it's the same kayaking gear he wore in TNG.
That's great that he can still fit into it. Good for him.
Yeah, barely. You see him walking to the hollow suite with his
And
paddle.
chugging
You get this.
6 Guinnesses or Guinea, if you will.
Yeah. You see Dr. Bashir, with his
Hmm.
teddy bear, and he's all happy. And they also cut to Lita looking through her room for the bear, which is pretty funny.
Yeah, she's gonna cry
Um,
herself to sleep tonight without that bear.
yeah, yeah. Then Cisco talks a little more. Why this is happening is frankly a mystery to me. After all, nothing has really changed. The Dominion is still a threat. The Cardassians are still threatening to retake the station, and I can still see the clouds of war gathering on the horizon. We see a little bit more. We see like Worf singing to himself
Listening
on
to
the
opera,
bridge of the
yeah.
Defiant. Yeah, he's like listening to opera. So why do I sense this is Cisco again? So why do I sense a newfound sense of optimism in the air? But maybe I'm overthinking this. Maybe the real explanation is as simple as something my father taught me a long time ago. Even in the darkest moments, you can always find something that'll make you smile.
Aw.
And then
Show the
I think they show the card. They show Jake and Nog giving him the
Yep,
card, and
Cisco shakes Nog's hand and he gives Jake a big old hug, and then that's basically it.
yeah, yep. So yeah, and that is the end of the
Which
episode.
I mean, great ending. I like how their little quests ended up, changing everyone's attitudes for the better. Like even though it was sort of inadvertent. Like I don't. I mean, I guess if you want to look at the theme of the entire episode, it was like their one good deed somehow like transformed like everyone that they came in
Yeah,
contact with.
yeah.
But the best part of the montage that you skipped over was Kai Wen and Dr. Geiger, and Kai Wen is sitting in the
That's
immortality
right.
machine, and to me, it's so weird. It looks like a commercial for like natural male enhancement or something. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, no, you're 100% right. And I can't believe I missed mentioning that. Yeah, and Kai Wynn being interested in immortality is foreshadowing stuff with her later on.
That's that.
Believe it or
Oh,
not.
I'm sorry. Did I say Kai? I didn't mean to say Kai Wen. I meant to say Jeffrey
Oh,
Combs.
I'm sorry. Yeah, Jeffrey Combs. Sorry.
Wei
Wei Yun.
Yun.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Him and
yeah.
Dr.
Yeah.
Geiger are basically trying out his immortality machine. It's funny because they're both so happy and smiling that it feels like a
Yeah,
commercial
yeah.
for some sort of medical disability machine or something like that. And I even
Yeah.
put the picture here in the Obscuritron. Um, but yeah. So should we go ahead and render our verdict?
Let's do it.
Remember how overrated? That is the question.
All right. Did you want to handle this one?
Sure, Steve. I forgot the saying, but what do you do you think that the episode of Deep Space Nine in the card should be saved for all of humanity or sent to the bottomless pit of obscurity, never to be seen of again?
Close, close, close.
Close, close. The
Well,
gist
I
is there.
have to say, I kind of wasn't looking forward to watching more Star Trek.
You asshole. Oh, did you think it was going to be another tearjerker?
No, I don't know. I mean, I watch these late at night because that's the only time I can get this stuff done. And usually at that time, I just want to watch like something dumb, like a dumb,
Porn.
sure, a dumb porn action movie, if those even exist. But I was like, well, but then I watched it and I was pleasantly surprised. It was a lot different than other. I'm not saying that like Trek is boring or anything. It's just I just wasn't in the mood. But yeah,
I
this
get you.
was this definitely lightened my mood as well. I mean, the writing was spot on. And it was a lot, different than your normal episode. It
Yeah,
featured Nog and
absolutely.
Jake, like they were, kind of like a C3PO and R2D2, like they were put at the
Yeah.
forefront, and everyone else was in the background. And yeah, it was just a nice, just fun episode overall. So I think it deserves to be remembered. And I'm sure if you have a dad who likes sci-fi, which neither his didn't and mine does not, I'm sure they would probably enjoy watching this on a Father's Day with you, dear
Yeah.
listener.
Yeah, and obviously, I think it should be remembered. There's only one episode of DS9 I'd like to forget about,
Ooh.
so yep, to remember
All
for
right, here
me.
we go. In accordance to Obscurity Now, the most important streaming YouTube podcast in all of the internet, you shall be remembered. Yes. Good show. Good show. All right.
So one thing I completely forgot because I am running on fumes and very exhausted is I actually do have a few lines of dialogue that I wrote down. For some reason, I put a space, an entire blank page in between the summary and those
go
lines.
for it.
But there's one point where basically Nog says, I think this is like after like Jake starts to think that like the Kai kidnapped Geiger. And Nog says lions, Geigers, and bears.
That's good.
And then like Jake says, oh my. And I personally hate when I hear lions, tigers, and bears, oh my, like in anything. But their delivery and the setup for it was so good, especially like Jake's oh my was like so good. But yeah, the lion was referring to like Jake when he says we're going to beard the lion in its den earlier. The bear is Kukalaka
right, yeah,
or whatever.
Like
and Geiger and Tiger, was replaced with Geiger. But it's funny that I read that Ron Moore, because he wanted to put in this line about lions, tigers, and bears. He basically was like, okay, I need to like name this guy something that rhymes with tiger, and that's how he named him Geiger. It was just for that line.
Wow, I like that. I like that dedication to a bit.
Yeah. And the only other thing that I wanted to mention was, hold on, is when Jake and Nog are getting like dressed down by Cisco after they've accused the Kai of burglary and kidnapping. So like Captain Cisco says, you accused, and he's like yelling this, you accused the Kai of burglary and kidnapping. And then Jake says, we didn't really accuse her of anything. Oh, I see. You just implied it. And then he says, and then I think it's Nog who says, exactly.
Nice.
Which is just absolutely ridiculous. And I do have one more. When Jake is like trying to tell Wei Yun that they're trying to find out who this man from the future, Willie Mays, or this man out of time is, he says, the entire future of the galaxy may depend on us tracking down Willie Mays. Then he does like a big pause and stopping him.
Yeah, there were some great comedic moments in this episode. Now, if they were to do a spin-off show of just Nog and Jake, do you think that could last? Do you think you would watch it?
I would. I wish that they could, but they can't. The actor that plays Nog, Aaron Eisenberg, died a few years ago. He, as you notice, he's very small. He had like lifelong kidney issues. In fact, I believe he had like a kidney transplant as a child. And he was a really nice guy. Actually, can't believe I hadn't even thought about mentioning this. He was following me on Instagram. And he follows like a lot of Star Trek fans, and he would often comment on, like my Trek memes that I would post and stuff. And I'd often see him interacting on other people's posts, and stuff. And him and Jake, the actor that plays Jake, they ended up becoming real life best friends, even as adults. And they had a podcast called The Seventh Rule together about Star Trek, where they'd like, either review episodes or just, whatever, just, Star Trek related stuff. The podcast is still going, obviously, without Aaron Eisenberg. But yeah, and the seventh rules of acquisition. I always thought it was going to be like something to do. They call it the seventh rule based on the Ferengi seven rules of acquisition, but it's nothing about Friends. It's just keep your ears open, I guess, to listen to them. But yeah.
All right. Well, I think that's going to do it for this episode. Anything else to add before we sign off here?
I mean, I could go on and on and on, but I think it's best we just end the podcast at a reasonable time.
Yeah, well, I think we're both about to turn into dust here. So yes.
Somebody beam me into my bed.
Yes, please. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for listening. Make sure you like, subscribe, and share. Help us fight the algorithm. It's much worse than the Dominion, I promise.
It's much worse than the soulless minion of
Yeah.
orthodoxy. The soulless minion
Help
of
us
algorithm.
fight the soulless minion of algorithm. Man, that's good.
Or maybe the soulless algorithm of orthodoxy.
Ooh, that's good too. Yeah. So, we can help grow this show/channel. All right. And we will see you probably next Sunday as we continue to unearth more obscure media only on Obscurity Now. See you next time. Engage!
You've been enjoying Obscurity Now, a podcast that's recorded live to tape and streamed to Twitch and YouTube. Subscribe so you never miss an episode or hilarious quip. Take us with you by following the download links provided in the show notes to wherever you get podcasts. And take notice of our various social media links. If that's what you're into, I'm not here to judge. And make sure you join us live next week at 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific as we continue to discuss more obscure media only on Obscurity Now.